Good evening, everybody. A special welcome to anyone who's joining us for their first time for this course. If this is your first course, then you've picked one hell of a piece to get going on. I can promise you this will be an experience like no other. To those who have done a course with me or with the choir before, a very warm welcome back. Those who did the Mahler 2 last year and those who did the Beethoven 9, which we were performing this time yesterday. It's amazing to believe. So a huge welcome to all of you. It's wonderful. We have a massive choir for this, as Mahler would have wanted and had for himself when he performed it. And people from all around the world, for all walks of life. And also we have in the pipeline a children's choir to sing the children's choir part in this piece, because this is very much, I have much to say about this piece, but as a sort of opening gambit, this is a piece for the whole world and for all people, without question. I think it was written to be that, and it fulfills that role, I think, in an extremely powerful way. I'm seeing you all chatting away already. So many names I recognise. Hello, I can only pick out a few, but hello to Jane, hello to Michael, hello to Karen, hello to Helen. Thank you for your lovely email today, Helen, about the Beethoven. Hello Sue, hello Judith, and of course, hello Mark. Mark, who I'm sure probably hasn't slept this week with the amount of amazing performances that you've been putting together. I hope you can hear me nice and clearly. If you can't at any time, just ping a message in the box, and even though I'm on a small delay, I will respond as soon as I can. So we will give it 5 minutes until everybody's here, and then I will explain a little bit about how this course is going to work, because it's really in two parts, this course, as the piece is in two parts. I shall explain a little bit about the piece, and particularly a little bit about part one. It's not really in movements, this piece, it's in parts, a bit like a sort of drama, a bit like an opera. You can't hear me. Someone says you can't. Someone is saying you can't hear me. Oh, but other people are saying they can hear me. Okay, that implies, I hope, that the problem is not with me. So if you can't hear me, perhaps Mark might have some suggestions for what might be up, but maybe your computer is muted or something. Refresh your screen. That is Mark's advice. Okay, phew. I don't have to say all that again. Of course, Carol, if you couldn't hear me, you can always rewind. Something that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's one of the good things about this is if you miss something, you can always rewind, or if I'm getting really boring, you can always pause and go and make yourself a cup of tea and then fast forward. But yes, I'll just give you a quick kind of rundown of how the course is going to work, how we've got a sort of plan for getting to know this amazing piece, and then this evening, in terms of singing, I don't want to overdo it because I know so many of you have been singing so much this week and we've got one hell of a long way to go, but we'll have a little kind of listen and a gentle sing through, I think just maybe to perhaps a little bit of the beginning of the piece. As all good pieces are, this first part is in three parts. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end. And for this first week, I think I'm going to work on the beginning and the end, and then in the second week we can work on the middle. Because the middle is, it all gets pretty intense in the middle. It's the longest sing without too many breaks, whereas in the outer sides, I think it'll be a nice way to kind of ease us in. But it's all just such a thrill to sing this piece. It's for me, it's been a great pleasure to get to know it better and better as I've been preparing for this course, and I'm sure that by the end of it all, I mean, by the time we get to November when we have our performance, we will all have a much greater understanding of what this piece is trying to say, and how it says it, crucially. It's Mahler's only other choral symphony after the Second Symphony, and really it makes the Second Symphony not look like a choral symphony at all, because the Second Symphony is in many ways a relatively ordinary symphony. I mean, Mahler never really wrote an ordinary symphony, but it's a relatively ordinary symphony, much in common with Beethoven's Ninth. And like Beethoven's Ninths, it reaches a point towards the end of the piece where it just needs a choir and it needs soloists to finish saying what it's got to say. This piece, as we'll find out, does not beat around the bush. It gets straight in there with the choir. You are the feature of this piece. It's a choral symphony in the truest sense of the word. In fact, I would say it's the most choral symphony of all symphonies. It's a kind of hybrid, really, between a symphony and a cantata or an oratorio like Messiah, and also an opera. It's got it all in there. It's kind of a universal kind of genre-defying piece. Great to see people joining from all around the world. Hello to Barbara from Stockholm. That is brilliant. I bet it's even colder in Stockholm than it is here. It's actually snowing today here in April. Can you believe that? But there we go. At least it's light in the evenings. That's something. Okay, so a minute to go, and we got tons of you joining. That's brilliant. Important thing about this piece, it's written for double choir, much like many of the great choral works were, Matthew Passion being a famous example, written for double choir. And usually, with a double choir piece, you've got to pick your choir, and that's the choir you're in. In fact, maybe you often don't get to choose which choir you're in, you just get told by the conductor. Well, all I'm going to tell you as a conductor is you don't need to choose which choir you're in. You can sing either, and you can sing both. So you get to kind of absorb yourself through this wonderful way of learning and performing and rehearsing this music. You can be part of the rehearsals for choir 1 and the rehearsals for choir 2, and you'll see that there is both a huge amount of overlap and both a wonderful way in which the two choirs complement each other and sort of sing to and from each other and then join together at various points to the most astonishing dramatic effect. So what we're going to do is, for the first 2 weeks of this rehearsal period, it's a month-long rehearsal period of 4 weeks. First 2 weeks we're going to work on choir 1, and then the second 2 weeks we're going to work on choir 2. And you are most welcome, and I would actively encourage you to come to all of it, because you will get more and more out of it. Like I say, even if you kind of think you're probably just a choir 1 or a choir 2 person, lots of it overlaps. So at the very least, you'll get to sing through a lot of your stuff again anyway, if you come to both rehearsals. So please do that. It'll be a huge amount of fun. We have got for you, as with the Beethoven 9, the wonderful singers from Sansara. This time, even more of them than just the 4 that did the Beethoven, because of course this piece is in ultimately 8 parts: SATB, choir 1 and choir 2. In fact, maybe you could say 9 parts, because there is the children's choir as well. And we've got them on every single part in every divisi, because it splits into 3-part divisi, even more kind of richer chords, where we've got so many different notes spread across the choir. The most amazing effect. So as ever, we have these wonderful learning tracks where you have either all of the singers singing with me playing the piano, or you have piano plus singers, and then louder in one ear you have your particular part, be that soprano choir 1 or bass choir 2, and everything in between. And I can guarantee this is the first time that this has ever been done, and I suspect it's probably the last time this will ever be done. This is a completely unique opportunity, not only to sing this extraordinary piece from the comfort of your home, but also to join in singing it with people from all walks of life, from all across the world, in this most amazing way that allows us to really get under the skin of the music in a way that I think with this piece is rarely, if ever, done. I mean, it's not done that often, despite being such a wonderful piece, and despite being such a much loved piece because it requires an enormous orchestra and 2 enormous choirs and a choir of children and 8 soloists. It is not done that often, a bit like Wagner's Ring Cycle, just for the simple fact that it costs an awful lot of money to put it on. You need an enormous hall. In fact, they basically built a new hall in order to perform this piece in the first place. And it requires a hell of a lot of rehearsal time. So I can promise you no one else in the world is doing this piece right now, and they are definitely not doing it in this most extraordinary way, where you can just hear individual parts sung by wonderful singers from Sansara and really get to know it inside out. So I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be able to do it like this. I think the result is just going to be something out of this world, and something that Mahler would have been so proud of, because really he wrote this piece for the whole world. And to be able to sing it like this right now, when we really need music like this, I think is fantastic. It's just gone 7 o'clock where I am. In terms of the second part of the piece, so we rehearse part 1 this month for a month. And then we have, between the end of this month and September, a couple of sort of refresher rehearsals, just to keep this piece really alive in our minds. We will record it a few weeks after the end of the course, and then over the summer a couple of refreshers, and then in September we will do part 2. Same format really, 4 weeks, first 2 weeks choir 1, second 2 weeks choir 2, and please do join us for both choir 1 and choir 2. And then a couple of refreshers, and then the usual kind of build up with dress rehearsals with the orchestra, dress rehearsals with the soloists, etc., to a performance in November of this year, which, like I say, I think is going to absolutely make the whole very foundations of the earth shake with its awesomeness in every sense of the word. So that's our kind of long-term trajectory, is a month of wonderful rehearsals now, a few bits and pieces to keep us engaged with this music, and then September, another month of rehearsals on part 2, and then November, the big event. It's going to be quite amazing. I have sent round via Mark, I think you have this universal link where you have a page of all the bits and pieces you need. I've sent him a marked up score. With a piece like this, where there's so much to get out of it, I realised pretty quickly that the markings I've put down already are by no means going to be everything that we're going to want to write down. So what we're going to do is, as the rehearsals run along, we'll talk about things in the rehearsals, I'll write them in my score, and then we can upload, I will upload an updated version on a regular basis. So you can either, if you're just doing it in your computer, you just download the updated version again, or you just copy in the new bits and pieces into your printed out or into your published score. In particular, I realised that it would be really useful to have a translation, so I've written a translation on my marked up score, so you'll have that newly updated score very soon. So you're going to basically have a kind of live score of this piece. So as we get to know it, our kind of the things we get to know and things we want to remind ourselves about will be sort of written into the score for you. So you can really kind of stay engaged. I think it'll be a really, really helpful learning tool, because I am sure that every one of you is thinking to a greater or lesser degree, oh my goodness, this piece is just enormous. Where do I start with it? I can't make head or tail of it. It sounds wonderful, but what the hell's going on? Well, that is what I promise. My guarantee is that by the end of this course, you will be able to make head or tail of it. It is a piece that is within our grasp. Mahler wanted it to be comprehensible. He didn't write complex music in order to be difficult to understand. He was in no way pretentious like that. He really, really wanted people to get this music. So that's what's going to happen with the score. A little bit about the piece itself, if you will allow me to ramble on for a little longer. This is his 8th symphony. Mahler had written 7 symphonies up until this point. Mahler was about in his late 40s at this point in his life. I would say pretty much at the height of his powers. It was just on the brink of the great catastrophe, the sort of triple catastrophe that happened in his life, which is when he having had a glittering career as the director of the opera in Vienna, he was driven out essentially by institutional anti-Semitism, and his young daughter, he had two daughters, and one of them very sadly succumbed to diphtheria and scarlet fever in what was a very, very traumatic death when she was only 2 or 3 years old. And in the whole furore of that tragedy, when the doctor was there, Mahler, in an attempt to lighten the mood, essentially asked the doctor to sort of give him a checkup as well to see whether he was all right. And in a most dreadful instance of kind of real irony, the doctor listened to Mahler's heart and said, with a heart like that, you should be taking it a little bit easier. And it turned out that Mahler had a major issue with one of the valves in his heart, which ultimately led to complications that led to his death, but 2 or 3 years later. So this piece has a certain poignancy to it because it is such an optimistic piece. It exceeds all of Mahler's music in its optimism by a country mile. It's almost pure joy, this piece, pure optimism. It was written at the very brink at which Mahler's life almost collapsed. He was a strong man, he was a determined spirit, and he was not entirely knocked. And in fact, he created the 9th Symphony and Das Lied von der Erde and much of the 10th Symphony after that great crisis, and that is some of the most wonderful music ever written. But this is really the last piece of Mahler where I think he had his great confidence that he'd built up throughout his life. And I think you feel that in the piece. Like I say, it's in 2 parts. The first part, Veni Creator Spiritus, which means come, Creator Spirit, Holy Spirit. It's a medieval hymn, 9th century hymn, possibly written by a German monk. And it is 7 verses in Latin. Mahler had been suffering. He used to head out to the Alps every summer to write music. And this summer, he spent the first 2 weeks, he was there for 10 weeks, the first 2 weeks he did not write a single note. He thought, I don't think I can write music anymore. I've lost it. Nothing is coming to me. And then, so the story goes, related by him, it was in a flash of inspiration that it came to him to write this piece as he did. He didn't have the text of the Latin hymn, but he was an extremely well-educated and well-read man. So pretty much from memory, he wrote out this piece, the first movement, followed by the second movement. He wrote it in 8 weeks. So, and that's, by chance, the same amount of time that we're going to learn the piece in. So as we work our way through learning this piece, just bear in mind that in the same amount of time, Mahler actually wrote every single flipping note of it, which is just breathtaking to believe that you could create something so glorious, so detailed, so profound in such a short space of time. And like I say, he didn't even have the text for part 1, this hymn. And so after he'd written it, he had, from Vienna, he had someone to telegraph him the entire text, which for those of you who might be familiar with how telegraphing used to work, you had to sort of tap out every single letter. So it was an enormously arduous task. But such was the kind of creative fire that he was under in that moment, and he found that he'd pretty much set every single word perfectly and recorded it all perfectly, which is quite extraordinary. And the second part is a setting of the final scene of Goethe's Faust, which is for the Germans what Shakespeare is to us. Goethe was the great literary figure in Germany towards the end of the 18th century, so a little later than Shakespeare, and Faust is his kind of masterwork. I mean, it's become something part of our culture. We all have some idea, or this kind of the idea of a Faustian pact with the devil, someone who sells their soul to the devil to gain something else. And spoiler alert, at the end of Goethe's Faust, unlike the original kind of myth of Faust, where Faust is damned to all eternity, Faust is redeemed and he ascends to heaven. So that is the extraordinary text for the setting of the second part of this symphony. So we have this invocation of the Holy Spirit as the first part, and then Faust's ascent to heaven in the second part, which is something that we will get to know over the course of the year. If you don't know the piece very well, there are lots of just glorious, glorious recordings out there. Some of my favourites, there's one with Claudio Abbado and the Berlin Philharmonic. There's also one with Pierre Boulez and the Berlin Philharmonic. Simon Rattle done a fantastic recording as well. There's also one by a conductor called Klaus Tenstedt, which you can see on YouTube actually, live in the Royal Festival Hall. It's one of those ones where you just would give anything to have been in the audience, because the atmosphere is just palpable in that performance. It's quite extraordinary. So check that one out. Klaus Tenstedt, Tennstedt, with the London Philharmonic in our own Royal Festival Hall here in the UK. Okay, well, that is enough, quite enough rambling. How about we do a little warm-up, and then we just have a go at singing the very opening of the piece. We might then kind of have a go at singing along with a few bits and pieces more of it, but I don't want to overwhelm you in this first rehearsal. So, let's do a few warm-ups. Just on, just a nice hum. Make sure you're nice and comfortable. Glass of water if you need it. Maybe a couple of bits of chocolate left over from Easter. Just going, and now open up to R. Now E. Getting a bit funny out there. Keeping going. Very good. Well done. Great. And now kind of going down. Like that. Just on R, going Very good. Well done. Super. Okay, and how about Veni Creator Spiritus? There's the opening words of this piece. Veni Creator Spiritus. Come, Creator Spirit, Creator Holy Spirit. So just singing Veni Creator Spiritus. Pick your octave. 2, 3. Veni Creator Spiritus. 1, 2, 3. Veni Creator Spiritus. 2, 3. Veni Creator Spiritus. Very good. Okay, that'll do us for a warm-up. Let us, just for now, before we sing through it, let's just listen to the very beginning of this piece as sung by Sansara, with me absolutely hacking away at the piano part. There are a hell of a lot of notes in this piece, and so I can only apologise in advance for the fact that I don't necessarily play all the right notes, certainly not in the right order, but the singers certainly do. I've split it, like I've done with the previous courses, I've split it into sections, both to help us learn it and certainly to help us record it. So I think the longest section is 3 minutes, but they're usually 1.5 to 2.5 minutes long, the sections. So it'll help us, I think, and certainly will help me, get a handle on the kind of bits of this piece as they stick together, and it means that in terms of stamina, you never need to sing for ages and ages. It means you can kind of get more out of each section, I think. So find page, in my score it's page 3, but page 1, so to speak, the very beginning of the piece, and let's just have a little look at how this goes. It's quite an opening. Well, there we go. That's the beginning. That's the gauntlet thrown down, and that's the kind of first section. I call it section 1A. In the next update of the vocal score, you'll see that I've written in the recording sections as well, so you know where we are. So, there we go. That's the beginning. What an extraordinary way to begin a piece. It's with the massive organ kicks off with that. I think I might just turn myself down if I'm going to play the piano that loudly. Huge E flat major chord. And that's Mahler being both the true artist that he was in creating this kind of, wham, sing moment. But also he was an exceptionally pragmatic man. And he knew that singers would be really grateful if he gave them their notes very clearly just before they start singing. So we get E flat major, and then we come in on Symphony, and there's our chord. So why don't we just have a go at singing that just first or second bar, but the first bar that you sing. I'll give you your notes, working up from the bottom of the score. Second, so bass is in choir 2, Veni, Veni, and then tenors, Veni, Veni, and then altos, Veni, sopranos, and then everyone else is somewhere in there. So bass is in choir 1, Veni, Veni, tenors in choir 1, Veni, Veni, sopranos. So let's just try it. After 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, Veni. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, Veni. Very good. Yeah, it needs to have so much punch, this opening. I promise you, and in fact I apologise in advance for the fact that I'm going to bang on about page 1 disproportionately compared to the rest, because this piece has to grab the audience by the scruff of the neck straight away. You need to make them think, listen. And in fact, you need to make the Holy Spirit think, listen. And Mahler writes that into the music very beautifully. And very clearly, in the fact, you may have noticed that for the first 4 or 5 pages, we only sing 3 words, and those 3 words are Veni, Creator, Spiritus. Come, Creator Spirit. So, another thing to watch out for is, it doesn't happen much in this piece, but in the beginning, in this first section, to fit the meter of the words, Veni, Veni, Creator, Spiritus, we get a few time signature changes. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, Spiritus. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, just to kind of keep the music alive. So let's give it a go. Like I say, it's just a welcome rehearsal. It's just a kind of like, let's see how it goes rehearsal. We will get into the detail in our sectional rehearsals. So just sing along and see how it goes. Like I say, the words at least are pretty straightforward for the beginning. Very good. Yeah, I hope some of it's clicking already. You've got to give it to Mahler, without wanting to be too mean to Beethoven. At least when Mahler writes a top B flat for the sopranos, you work up to it. Veni, veni, creator, veni, veni. He just makes you think, okay, one step at a time. There's an E flat, there's an F, there's a G, there's an A flat, and there's the B flat. It's so beautifully written for the voices. It's intentionally demanding, but not, I think, unfairly demanding. Great. Let's do that again. Let's give it a go. Isn't it great the way, if we look at page 4, figure 1, we go veni, veni, creator spiritus, and then second choir immediately answers us back, veni, veni, creator spiritus, and then we answer again, veni, veni, creator, veni, veni, and then choir 2, veni, veni, spiritu creator. So we just pass this phrase, this amazing kind of charismatic call to action between the choirs. Okay, once more from the top. Here are your notes. Basses, tenors, altos and sopranos. There we go. And give it a real V. I want to hear the note V in the V. Prepare it, have the V just before the beat, really strong, and have the note in it. So when you open your mouth, the note's already there. Okay, so sing along. Here we go, and we'll keep going this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Veni, veni, creator spiritus. Basses. Dotted rhythms. Isn't it wonderful the way, after it has been so intense. Oh, wrong page. this wonderful languishing. And then it just melts into this gorgeous soprano solo. Delightful harmony. It's beautiful. He really understood contrast, Mahler. You know, you have this short, powerful opening followed by most gorgeous lyrical music. Bravo, well done. It's an arresting way to start a piece, but we will get to grips with it bit by bit. Just to kind of update you on the words, page 7 is the first time we start singing something other than Veni Creator Spiritus. I think Mahler realised that perhaps that message was well conveyed by that point. Basses, you kick things off. Tuorum visitamentes tuorum. Which means visit the minds of your people. Tuorum, or of your sort of. I just briefly started the master track again. Tuorum, your people, literally your things. Visita, visit. Mentes, the minds. So visit the minds of your people. So Holy Spirit, come into our minds is basically what's being said here. And you'll see basses, and this is a theme that we'll see throughout the piece. Tuorum visita me, which is very much the same as Veni, Veni Creator Spiritus. The whole piece is tightly constructed around that one melody. Veni, Veni. You'll see it right towards the very end without wanting to give you too much of a spoiler. The whole piece ends in E flat major, and the trumpet's going. And having been the piece in the most exciting sort of turn of events, it goes even higher, as though striving up to heaven like that. Most extraordinary moment. So keep a lookout for that striving theme that we get throughout the piece. It's one of the things that actually makes this piece more singable as well, is that Mahler is so economical with the sort of music that he writes in it. He's always reusing stuff and sort of slightly tweaking it and then bringing it back, that much of it is familiar as we go along. So you get more and more out of it because you learn a line of music and then you see it coming back later. You know, even if it's slightly different, you're familiar with it in a way that I think makes this piece extremely rewarding to learn, as well as in terms of the words. Well, like you can see, the words are just very, very repetitive, much like a kind of medieval Gregorian chant would have been. So we don't have to squeeze many words into a short space in this piece. We can really settle into the words. Great. In the master track you've heard at the moment, I just thought in this welcome rehearsal we'd have both choirs so we can really just hear everything. But in our rehearsals later this week, we'll just be rehearsing with one choir, just with choir one, and with your individual voice part louder, which should make life a little easier. I appreciate, depending on how big your screen is, the music is quite small. I'm only on quite a little iPad, trying to read the piano part, but I promise you it'll become more and more familiar, so you're not having to read the notes in great detail. They'll become an aid memoir. So don't fret too much about that. Let's give that opening section another sing through. See how it's settling in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Veni, Veni, Creator Spiritus. Veni, Veni, Creator Spiritus. Veni, Creator. Well done. Bravo. Great. A little note. Take a breath before that last bar. So we're on this big... oops. Breathe. Veni, veni. Just like that. So it can really kind of languish into the next bit. Whenever we get, and it gets passed around between all parts, this turum visitamen, always very marcato, very rambunctious, assertive. It starts off in the basses, because I think that's something that basses, it comes very naturally to us, that kind of yum tom 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 ta tom, but it gets passed into the tenors, and then sopranos 2 before 6, testorum visita, really high impact. Basses, let's just have it at figure 5. Everyone, feel free to sing along if you want to. Figure 5, tuorum visitamen, with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, tuorum visitamen, testorum. Very good, yeah. Men testorum. Slightly tricky scale going down there. Just sing for me. Men testorum. 1, 2. Men testorum. Very good. Sopranos. Similar idea. Really marcato. 2 before 6. Men testorum visita. After 3, 1, 2, 3. Men testorum visita. Very good. Yeah, really yum ta tum on the dotted rhythms. Lots of spice in those. Bravo. Okay, how about we keep going? Don't worry if you're struggling to follow. It's literally how everyone reacts to this piece at first. There's so much on the page. You know, you've got the piano part, and then you've got 2 choirs, and then you've got a whole host of soloists above. There are lots of ways. I couldn't do it on the marked up score because it totally depends who you are and which part you're singing, but there are ways of marking so you can always find your part when you turn the page. Perhaps a little bracket at the beginning of the stave, at the beginning of each page, or little brackets where your first entry is on each page, that kind of thing. Really helps to keep going with things. But it will become more and more familiar. And really, the great thing about this kind of music is you sort of won't need to follow the music because you'll just know, oh, this is my entry here. It's written naturally. You know, Mahler understood he was not going to get 500 professional singers to sing this piece. They were going to be people just like you who love music and love singing. There are really very few very difficult entries in this piece. Often we enter together, and often we enter after a very clear gesture. Great example being the next section. So if you move to page 11, we get a nice break after that first opening, so we can kind of catch our breath. The soloists sing some extremely luxuriant music. And just before we come in, we get this very clear... And that's us on the downbeat where it says nicht schleppen. I've written as many times as I can find them translations of the German, because Mahler wrote in German all these explanations, not because he wanted to be obtuse. In fact, quite the opposite. He thought that Italian, by this point, by the early 20th century, was becoming a little bit alienating for people. So he wanted to write it directly in the language that the people who would be singing it would understand, which in our case would be English. Nicht schleppen literally just means don't drag. We have this word in English, to schlepp. What a schlepp that was. It comes from via Yiddish into English, schleppen. And Mahler, in this kind of, we'll find this a lot. It's a kind of Viennese irony thing. It's not dissimilar to kind of English irony, that you say not the opposite of what you want, but you say it by a sort of negative way. So when he says don't drag, what he really means is get a bit of a move on. And you'll see when he says don't rush, he means put the brakes on a bit. So usually if he says nicht something, what he means is actually a little bit of the opposite of this, please. So in this moment, just keep it flowing. Let's have a listen to it first. This is what I call part 1B. Let's have a listen, have a follow. Sing along if you want to, but if it's easier, just follow the music so we get a hold on it. Again, it's only another short section. So it starts just a bit, probably, I think the master track starts somewhere towards the end of page 10. But you'll see where the soloists come in. That's figure 10. And this is the top of page 11 now. Here's your bar before, and here we are. Beautiful phrase, that. So this is quite two. Quite two again. Tenors in 3 parts here. Great. See, there's a little bass entry there on page 16. And then the whole of choir 1, we come in at figure 14, which is coming up. Something familiar coming up. There we go, section 2. So we're a good 20% through the piece by this point, and you'll see that it's value for money really, this piece, because you get just great stuff to sing, but because it's passed between the choirs and the soloists, you don't exhaust yourself singing the whole time. It's a really great thing about it. So let's have a go then, just at this little section. It's nice and slow. We're in A flat major by this point. Beautiful harmony here. And it's grazia. The words here mean fill with the highest thanks. Imple, fill. Superna grazia, with the highest thanks. Where's the next word? Pectora, which literally means the breasts, the kind of hearts. Que tu creasti, which means which you have created. So fill the hearts of those who you've created with the highest thanks for you. Okay, let's give it a sing through. See how it goes. Like I say, don't worry if bits and pieces fall off the side of the road as we're going along here. It's just to kind of get a shape of the piece. We will, bit by bit, really kind of settle into it. So So back to page 11. And I'll conduct you this time. Beautiful. It's so tender, this. Having asked kind of impetuously, we now ask more imploringly. So this is all quiet too. Basses. Parakletos is a name used for the Holy Spirit. Okay, figure 14. Bravo, well done. There are some real harmonic changes of gear in there to keep an eye out for. Like I say, it's all stuff that we're gonna get to know. Super. Okay, tell you what, to finish things off, let's have a look at the very end of the movement. Like I say, in this first week, I'm going to look at the kind of outer sections of the piece, and then in the second week, we'll look at the middle section. So let's find towards the end, which page am I looking for? Around page 70, I think. Bit beyond page 70, in fact. My iPad is being slow. Okay, it is page 91. That's the one I'm looking for. So this is section I, the last section that we'll work on in this piece. Section I, figure 84. I hope if you're all using, I think there is only one score for this, and it's the Universal score. But do use that if you can, because it means we've got the same page numbers and the same figures and everything. With a piece this big, makes life a lot easier. So, figure 84, tempo 1, something we might recognise here. Same theme as the opening, but in B flat major this time. Gloria, Gloria. Gloria. We kind of sing that like a very tightly tucked in dotted rhythm. Gloria, sit Domino. So, like before, let's have a quick listen. Follow it. See if you can follow your part. And then we'll have a sing through. It's the most thrilling ending, this. So, a couple of bars before. End of page 90. Here we go. Gloria. Gloria. Sit Gloria. Sit Gloria. Sit Gloria. Page 96. Here we go. That's one hell of a high impact ending. It sounds pretty extraordinary with single voices and piano. It's going to sound really extraordinary with you guys singing it. Okay, let's have a go at singing that. Like I say, don't worry if you get lost. I'm going to conduct it, and it's just to kind of get ourselves acquainted with this piece, and we will, I promise you in rehearsals, pick it apart, put it back together again, and it'll all make sense. It is just the most amazing moment. So back to figure 84. Let's give it a sing through. We start on these notes. Basses, that's a D. Tenors are the same. That's an F. And surprise and altos on a B flat. B flat major triad. Here we go. Figure 84. Gloria. We know what that word means. a thrill to sing that last bit. I just love Mahler, ever the pragmatic man. If you look on page 91, on that figure 91, where we start these extraordinary A flat major scales. Most of us go pa-tree, pa-tree, pa-tree. The sopranos, because he knows that you guys have got top C's and B flats to deal with, he just makes you go pa, and then you don't get any more words. You just go ah, ah, and you just sing to ah the rest of the piece, and then tri on an E flat at the end. Kind of him, I think. I mean, perhaps others might say I would have liked not to have to deal with any more consonants in that moment as well, but he takes pity on poor sopranos having to get up into those top C's. Like I say, he was a pragmatic guy. So it's a nice moment that on page 101, figure 91, because choir 2 come in one by one. So basses, tenors, and then altos and sopranos. But we all come in at the same time. In harmony, rather beautifully. So basses and tenors, like that, and altos and sopranos. It's a great moment. Let's try it slowly. Our entry in the 5th of 91. So it's this kind of speed. 1, 2, 1, 2. That kind of speed. So let's try it. Here is starting notes. A flat. Sorry, there's very annoying bars on my A flat. Pa, pa. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 1, 2. And then we're on that chord until the rest of the piece. Very good. Let's try it a little bit faster, this kind of speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And then that chord there. Yeah. Sopranos, don't worry about sticking down the octave for now. You know, maybe this evening is not the evening for a top C. I'm certainly not going to brave it up there. Very good. Once more, and then we'll see about the very, very last chord. So 5th bar of 91. Pa, pa. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, breathe. 2, 3, and. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, breathe. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then bam on that last note. It's an E flat. 3, 3. Just give me 3. Just 3. It's a tra. Or 1, 2, 3. That's it. We need to have that just in our pocket for the whole movement, ready just to take out at the last minute and go bam, because it's such an effective way to end a piece. And you'll see after in the last 5 bars, just before the last 5 bars, you take a breath. He writes a comma, which let's make a kind of crotchet length comma, and you just go ah, because we're in the middle of the word ah, tree, father, pa, ah, tree. It's a great ending. Okay, let's just sing that very last section. So just jumping back to where we started, page 84. Sorry, figure 84, page 91. Like I say, don't worry if you miss bits and pieces. See if you can get that last bit we just practiced, and then we'll call it a day. So, figure 84. Here we go. Gloria, Well done. I'm sure that was something of an overwhelming kind of introduction to this piece. I don't think there's any other way to introduce this piece, and it is kind of meant to be overwhelming. Be excited that whatever you're feeling now, confusion, worry, excitement, that we are going to dig right under the skin of this piece, find out what it's all about, put it together one brick at a time until we've built the whole thing. And you are going to own it. We've got 2 whole courses in order to get our heads around it, so it's going to be an absolute thrill. Any questions, just get in touch via Mark. I hope to all see you all very soon, including basses and anyone else who wants to join tomorrow. Have a very good evening.